Hey everyone, it's Michael from Replica Airguns. Today we're going to talk about magazine types for air guns, why some are used in some and some aren't used in others, and because I get a lot of questions, why can't you just use a stick magazine for pellets? Why can't we have a stackable magazine for pellets? Why are they usually rotary or belt fed? And why a stick magazine? Why not a full-size dropout metal magazine? In a perfect world, we'd have dropout full-size metal magazines that hold the CO2 and the ammunition. It's the most realistic and everything, but not every air gun is trying to be ultra realistic. So they'll conform to different types of magazine types just because it's easier, and it's an air gun. It's not a real gun. It doesn't have to be exactly like a real gun. So today we're going to talk about the different magazine types, what kind of guns they're generally used in, some limitations with ammunition in magazines, and so forth. So starting out with the most basic type of magazine, you'll find stick magazines. This is from a PPK. This is just a plastic, probably one of the most simplest magazines out there from the PPK. It was one of the first blowback air guns that I can remember. And you just put your BBs in here, and there's this little spring that pushes them up. There's a follower, generally this little guy here. There'll be different places on magazines that have followers. And that'll tell the gun kind of when it's empty, and that generally will lock the slide back, but not all the time. And so that's a very basic plastic stick magazine. We have another one here, and this one just happens to have this fake butt plate on it to make it look more realistic when it's in the gun. Okay, it'll usually cover up the CO2, basically the little tab for tightening it. Then you have metal magazines. So they add a little bit more weight to the gun, but essentially they do the same thing. So you see you have this follower that pops the last BB in there and generally locks back the slide. Oftentimes I see these types of magazines in non-blowback, but for instance, these are both for blowback air guns. So they can be blowback, they can be non-blowback. Here's another one, right? This is from, I believe it's a, can't remember, PPQ or something. I can't remember exactly, but you'll see this is metal, mostly with a little plastic piece here, but it's the same thing. Put your BBs in, there's a metal spring that pushes the BBs up. So why do you not see these so much in pellet guns? Well, the problem with pellet guns is you can't stack the pellets because there's generally a fair amount of force, especially when you load it all the way up, and that force puts pressure on the pellets. Generally, pellets are made out of lead. They're not surrounded, like in a real gun, you have a lead bullet inside of a brass shell. The brass shell keeps the shape of the ammunition. It doesn't let the lead inside of it deform. But if you just have lead pellets all stacked together, they're going to get mushed, they're going to deform, and they're just not going to feed properly. They're not going to fit the barrel. They're just going to get stuck generally and not work very well. So you generally don't see any stick magazines with pellets, okay? So that's the reason there. It would be cool if you could do it, but unfortunately that's not the case. So next up, we're going to talk about full size. Actually, hold on, there's one thing I want to talk about. Spring-fed magazines. This kind of crosses over to the full-size metal versus the stick magazine. But with airsoft, you've got these, they're not really stick magazines, okay, but they are spring-fed magazines, similar, right? So you put your ammunition, usually you get high kappa ones, which would have these rotating springs that you need to, partway through your shooting experience, you're going to have to crank that spring, otherwise the airsoft BBs will not load through. They will not make it up. Then you have the low capacity or mid capacity similar guns that just have a spring, and they'll hold like 50 rounds, maybe a bit more, maybe 80 rounds. These guys can hold 400 rounds of ammunition easily, and because it's one big hopper essentially full that you just keep feeding BBs using the spring to tensen up that spring and get them up there. These are going to find mostly in airsoft, okay? With the stick magazines, I didn't mention it, but you'll find these for airsoft and Steel BB, again, not pellet. Now, kind of moving to the full size, even though these are full size magazines, we'll move into the full size magazines. We have these full size magazines, and they typically will hold the CO2, okay? So you can see how you can put the CO2 in there. They'll have a similar spring-fed system with a follower, okay, that pushes it up. And you can see right here, this is the little bit that comes up. It's the follower that tells the gun it's empty, that locks back the slide. So that's why, and I'll get to the rotary magazines, that's why it's hard to have locking slides on rotary magazines because you don't have a follower to tell the gun it's empty. But you'll find, like, look at how tiny that is. This one happens to be for the SIG P365. It's one of the smallest full-size CO2 holding magazines I've ever seen. They did a good job trying to get everything in there. But typically you'll find, you know, metal ones like this that hold the CO2. These are found for obviously Airsoft and Steel BB. Okay, this is for a rail gun that I have, but you can see same type of thing, follower, right? You got that follower that locks the slide back, right? Here's one that's made out of metal and plastic. Now this would be for a full blowback gun. I might make a video on full blowback versus partial blowback, but this is a full blowback magazine. So every time the slide cycles, it comes back and it drags a BB. Basically the slide comes back and pops the BB into the chamber, okay? Whereas this one's a little different. When you pull the trigger, it pushes the BB in. So this is usually from a partial blowback air gun, which doesn't have the actual blowback mechanism feed the BB into the chamber. That's manually done when you pull the trigger, pushes the BB from the magazine into it. But other than that, it works very much the same. This one just happens to be steel and plastic. And here's another one, just a basic, you know, metal magazine. You've got your valve there, right? You've got your spring. Everything works good. That's from a non-blowback gun. And they come also in standard, got the right side here. They come in standard, can I open this up? There we go. So this is from one of the Crossman AR series full auto machine guns. Same thing, this one just happens to hold 2 CO2s because it can. Why not, right? Why not? Because if you can get 2 in there, you're gonna have more shooting fun before you have to reload those CO2. Again, same system, okay, right? So as soon as that comes up, it tells the gun it's full. This basically, this itself will tell the gun it's full. There's no follower on the side, but same type of system. You just pull this back, load your ammunition, 25 rounds, you're good to go. All right, so moving on, we have rotary magazines, and these are most commonly found in pellet guns, okay? Now, a lot of these rotary type magazines can shoot pellets and steel BB, right? Unless it happens to be airsoft, then it's just gonna shoot airsoft. You don't see a lot of airsoft rotary magazines other than in the revolvers, obviously, and you'll usually find that those are shell loading revolvers that have so it's not really a rotary magazine, it's a cylinder. So this is a dedicated rotary magazine that goes into the gun, and obviously plastic or steel, usually they're one or the other, and they can hold BBs and they can hold pellets, okay? Another way of doing it, it's kind of like a hybrid stick magazine, rotary magazine. So this is for pellets or BBs as well. Some of these will shoot BBs, but you put your pellets in here and there's 2 rotary magazines on either end. So once you unload the one side, you flip it around and unload the second side, and you'll find these in like Beretta, different guns, Berettas. Most commonly, I've seen the Beretta series use these, right? The PX4. So I think that's from that one. And yeah, so that's a rotary magazine. Now next, I want to talk about very similar, but this would be a belt-fed magazine. And the way it works, if I can open it up. Open, there we go. So it's a belt. So it just gives you more ammunition. This is a 30 round. This, I believe, is from the SIG P320. And so you just load this up, and it does create a little more friction than a standard rotary magazine, but you can get more ammunition in here. And typically you're gonna find them in stick magazines or this hybrid magazine. This happens to be from the M17. So this is cool because it's like a hybrid full-size dropout magazine that holds the CO2, but also holds these little guys here. So you can preload. If you have a bunch of these, you can preload these full. They are belt magazines again, and pop them in there without having to redo the CO2 every time. Or you can just buy a bunch of these and have a bunch of these and just, you know, keep reloading these until you run out of CO2. But you could have multiple magazines going on. So that's pretty cool. And then here's another option. This is from one of my air guns. This is from, I think, the Virtus 22 caliber. It's a pellet. So you see it's a little bit larger. These are for pellets. And yeah, those are going to work nice. And again, a belt-fed magazine, right? That's a full-size kind of dropout, but there's no CO2 in this one. This one actually has the gas, or I think the PCP air in the buttstock area, okay? So that's pretty cool. Last but not least, you're going to find magazines built into guns. Usually lower quality guns, but I'm not going to limit it to lower quality guns. So for instance, this one here, you just load your BBs right in the gun. So there's no external magazine, it's an internal magazine. Okay, nothing wrong with that. This is a really cool little gun, very solid. Nothing's going to go wrong with this. It's pretty straightforward. And here's another gun that uses a similar system, but this one just happens to be on the top. Okay, so this is an old, I believe, Daisy, very classic Desert Eagle from Daisy. It is a blowback gun, by the way, kind of cool, right? So I'm not going to shoot it. I don't know if I have CO2 in it. Anyways, we'll just leave that alone for now. Figure that out later. Anyways, that's pretty much it. So we've gone over basically simple stick magazines. We've gone over full-size dropout metal magazines, which can also be metal or plastic or both. We've gone over rotary magazines. We've gone over belt-fed magazines, and we've gone over internal magazines and sort of covered what ammunition they're typically used for. So again, stick magazines can be used for BB and airsoft. Full-size dropout metal magazines that have basically the follower system, spring-fed system, they're going to be BB and airsoft, right? And again, these guys are going to be BB, typically airsoft, but BB. Sometimes, I think there's some new guns. There's one from Bear, I believe. It's like an AEG that might have a similar magazine like this for Steel BBs, but usually it's airsoft. Rotary magazines are typically going to be for pellet, but can also shoot Steel BB. Then you have these belt-fed magazines that, again, most of the time for pellet. Sometimes if you want, you can shoot Steel BB unless you're going to be using a 22 caliber one like this. Okay, I wonder if you could put airsoft in there. Maybe I haven't tried it, but it's about the same diameter. It's possible, right? And then you have the internal magazines that are typically going to be Steel BB. I haven't seen too many. Well, there are some airsoft guns that have internal, basically magazines that are spring-fed as well, but not very common. All right, thanks for watching another Replica Airguns informational video. Don't forget to subscribe. Check us out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Also check out our online Canadian and US store over at replicaairguns.ca for Canada and replicaairguns.us for the US, where we have air guns, BB guns, airsoft guns, pellet guns, blank guns, and other accessories. All right, thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.